Hello everyone and welcome to a crash course video summing up aquatic science in 1 year. As it is, my class was very close, which made it even more fun than it already was. The very first thing we did in the beginning of the year was learn about lab safety. Being juniors and seniors, we already knew most of it, we just had to know how to act and where all the equipment was located in the classroom. This lab review helped me be better prepared for the dissections we did later in the year. It will also help students know how to act in future labs or even jobs like doctors. One of the first labs we did was the Cartesian diver, the picture on the left. It uses an eyedropper and a soda bottle filled with water, and when you squeeze and flip the bottle, the eyedropper would move, representing buoyancy. It was also named after a French scientist and mathematician who used it to show these properties. The middle picture was the penny boat lab, and the purpose of the lab was to build a boat out of 2 pieces of foil and see how much weight it could hold, also teaching about buoyancy. The picture on the right represents the penny lab, which uses an eyedropper, water, and a penny, of course. This lab showed cohesion and surface tension, which are very important water properties. These 3 labs were very informative and also showed students some of the water properties. Some of the dissections we did later in the year were a starfish, a dogfish, which is like a shark, a crawfish, and an oyster. We had to use the lab safety skills learned in the beginning of the year because we were dealing with animals and scalpels. The labs were super fun, and in my hands on the left side are 11 baby dogfish. I became a mother this year. The purpose of the lab was to learn the organs and structures of the animals. I learned a lot and never really knew how hard it was to open an oyster. Let's just say, being me, I broke a scalpel. In aquatic science, we went on many field trips. The first one was to SeaWorld. At SeaWorld, we saw the dolphins, which is, of course, my favorite part. We learned where they keep, the locations for water temperatures, and we saw the beluga whales and the killer whales. But the main thing we had to learn about was the aquariums, because we would have some in our classroom. Pictured are the ones from SeaWorld, and our guides helped us determine what fish were going to be best suit for our tanks at school. They also told us how to handle the fish and how to take care of them. We had to learn how to clean the tank and keep our fish healthy. Some of the tools needed to ensure you have a clean tank is a bio wheel, filters, sponges to clean the walls, and a pipe filter pictured on the right, which helps get the bacteria and feces out of the gravel. This helped me be more responsible because if our fish died, we had to go buy more. Some of the things you need in order to keep a fish is a tank, bio wheel, a net to transport the fish, filters to filter out any bacteria, a temperature reading guide to help know the temperature, heaters to keep the temperature regulated so the fish don't get stressed out, a pH tester kit to ensure the water levels are safe for the fish, which includes ammonia. You need gravel for the bottom and anything else you may want to put in the tank to make it pretty. An assignment we received during the year was to create a website for our tank. The people in my group were Anna, Bella, Raquel, and Andres. Throughout the year, we only had 2 fish die and 1 crab. We had a dedication page for Andres, our fish, who was provided by Coach Anna, who tragically died in the filter. We had to work together because it was a group grade, and at the end we had to evaluate each other on how much work we did and how we provided for the group. Since we had a saltwater tank, we had to learn how to make salt. To make salt water, we needed a lot of salt, a huge spoon to stir it, and measuring cups. This process took a long time, and we had to make sure it was exactly right because if there was too much salt in the water, we could practically burn our fish. Since we were making the salt water, we had to test it many times and make sure that the readings were correct. My fish tank throughout the year was extremely successful because we didn't have that many fish die. We overcame fishic, which was a disease that appeared on the fish and it looked like there were bubbles all over him. And to cure him, we had to constantly be changing out the water, add salt to the water, and even raise the temperature in the fish tank to kill the bacteria. We added new fish to our tank, all of them got along, and no one else died. Some of the things we did on a daily basis for the first probably 3 months we had the tank was constantly checking the pH, the ammonia, the nitrates, the nitrites, because we had to ensure that the water levels were okay for the fish to be in, and if they were out of range, we had to take some of the water out, put more deionized water that we had made, and continue to clean the tanks constantly if they were out of range. As you can tell, there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with having to keep a fish tank with many fish inside of it. We had to come inside the classroom every single day and feed the fish, because if we forgot, the fish would probably end up fighting and eating each other like we saw happen in our saltwater tank. It also taught us how to be more clean and make sure that our tank was clean, because those fish were like our kids. One of the very first things we did in aquatic science was learn about the water properties. Some of the ones that I remember best were cohesion, which is the sticking together of particles of the same substance, because the labs helped me with that. Adhesion, which is the attraction or process of adhering to a surface or object. Polarity, which is an uneven distribution of electrons between hydrogen and electron atoms. And capillary action, which plants use because it allows water to be sucked up through the stem of a plant. One part of the year we had to learn about the water cycle and its importance. We learned that the sun is the driving force of the water cycle, and whenever water changes from one state to another and moves from one place to another, it gives off energy, or energy is being absorbed. There's also a process called transpiration, and it's the process by which water evaporates from plant leaves into the atmosphere. When water evaporates into the atmosphere, it cools and condenses to form clouds through a process called condensation. In a group project we had to do, I was assigned the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is an essential nutrient for animals and plants, and it plays a critical role in cell development and is a key component of molecules to store energy. Phosphorus moves in a cycle through rocks, water, soil, and sediments, and organisms. Over time, rain and weathering causes rocks to release phosphate ions and other minerals. This inorganic phosphate is then distributed in soils and water. The plants and animals take up this phosphate, and it goes through the cycle all over again. When a plant or animal dies, it decays, and the organic phosphate is then returned back into the soil. Within the soil, organic forms of phosphate can be made available to plants by bacteria that break down organic materials. Phosphorus in soil can end up in waterways and eventually in oceans. Once there, it can be incorporated into sediment over time. The ocean covers 70% of the Earth's surface. There are three main zones to the ocean. The euphotic zone, which receives a lot of sunlight. The second layer is called the dysphotic zone, which receives not a lot of sunlight. The third layer receives no sunlight at all. Because the second layer receives less sunlight than the first, not as many fish are found there. The ocean contains a large variety of animal life. Most animals live in the top two ocean zones, where they have access to plants and other animals to eat. Lakes and ponds are considered freshwater biomes. Only 3% of water comes from these freshwater biomes. There are over 700 different species of fish that live there, and 99% of all fresh water is either from ice or located in aquifers. There are 4 key features that determine the ecology of streams and rivers: the flow of the water, the amount of light, the temperature or the climate, and the chemistry of the river. Smaller bodies of water, such as ditches and puddles, are also considered freshwater biomes because they help some form of life survive. Another place we went for a field trip was called Mitchell Lake. There we dug holes to see how much water could go through it. We also conducted water quality tests, and we saw the different fish that were located there and some of the animals that also live there. A fun fact that they shared with us was that It was also a home to many different species of birds, and that it used to be a high place where malaria was found. Another waterway we learned about this year was something called an estuary. An estuary is a body of water partly surrounded by land where fresh water from rivers and streams run into and mixes with salt water from the ocean. These estuaries are extremely important because they are among the most productive natural systems on Earth due to the mixing of nutrients from land and sea, and they produce more food than a farmland could. Another important ecosystem that we learned about this year was a swamp. A swamp is an area of land with trees that is always wet and is usually covered by water. Swamps can be small or large, and they play an important role to our ecosystems. A cool analogy I found was a swamp is like a natural paper towel because they soak up water when it rains a lot. There are two different types of swamps, freshwater and saltwater. In these two swamps, there would be different animals and plants located at both. Did you know that waves, tides, and currents can determine where a fish can live, or even plants? A large movement of water in one direction is a current. The global conveyor belt moves water all around the world. Waves are located on the ocean surface and are commonly caused by wind transferring its energy to the water. A wave's size depends on the wind speed and the duration and the area over which the wind is blowing. Tides are when the sea rises and falls along the shore. These tides can also help fish go onto land and find food and also get away from predators they may come across. As mentioned before, there are three main layers of the ocean, and different animals and plants are found here based on how much sunlight can go through these layers. The first layer has the most plant and animal life, the second doesn't have any plant life, but some animals, and the third only has animals that can survive in pitch black because there's absolutely no sunlight. The different migration patterns of aquatic life can be determined on the waves, the currents, and streams, but of course, where they're going to find food. These fish are traveling to places where food is easy to find, but also where they're going to be safe. Most fish travel in packs when they do, and they can be getting food from plants or even simple animals like phytoplankton or zooplankton. One of the most fascinating things we did this year was the Port A field trip. The reason why I liked it so much because it was a hands-on the whole time. We were able to classify different aquatic organisms using tools, and it showed us the different boat structures that they used to catch these fish. And at the end, we even got to play in the ocean while being able to catch a crab at the same time. The ocean is the home to many different animal species, and the Pacific Ocean is the biggest ocean in the world. Its name means peaceful ocean. In videos from the Blue Planet series we watched in class, we saw the predator-prey relationship between many different species. Only 5% of the ocean has been explored, and it can be a pretty place or it can also be your worst nightmare with some of the deadliest creatures known to man. In the video series, we learned about penguins and dolphins, whales, different fish school groups, and even polar bears and how they survive in the different types of oceans, from warm waters to freezing waters. The Blue Planet series videos taught me a lot about the different animals in the ocean, their ecosystems, and where they live, and also where you can find these types of fish. Those videos were so cool and one of the best parts of the in-class work. One of the field trips I would have to say I disliked the most would probably be Saws, but it taught me a lot at the same time. The only reason why I didn't like it was because it smelled so bad. Our guide told us that anything that goes down any type of drain, from showers to sewers to even sinks and toilets, all goes there to be purified. The water they see daily is very dirty, and the water goes through many different stages in order to be cleaned and purified so that it can be reused in some type of way. SAW's wastewater treatment plan can be broken down into a few simple steps. The wastewater and sewage is pumped underground to the lifting station where it is chemically treated and sent for separation. The separation process filters out solids larger than about 13 millimeters, which is super small, and the waste is then transported to a refuse facility and buried. Primary settling basins allow heavier material to sink and be scraped away. The waste is then fermented for 30 days and used as a fertilizer. The secondary clarifiers gravity feed the water through, and bacteria continues to clean the water to make it drinkable. The water is finally chemically treated with chlorine to ensure it is free from bacteria. Then it passes over a wire and into a water supply system. One of the most important things that I learned this year was our human impact on our environment. I never knew that our environment is covered by so much trash and plastic that is harming our oceans and our animals, and that even simple products we use daily, like face washes that have tiny microbeads, are being flushed down the sink and are ending up in our oceans, or even simple things like sunscreen are killing coral in our oceans. In the beginning of the year, we were assigned a project called a Petricuccia. Mine was over ichthyology, which is the study of fish. Ichthyologists have to at least have a master's degree, and their basic job includes studying schools of fish, sharks, and even distinct fish. They don't make that much money, and they're constantly doing some type of research, from looking at fish in tanks to even going to the ocean or lakes or rivers to see different kinds of fish, as well as doing water quality tests for these waters. One assignment that impacted me the most this year and really made me think about how important it is to think about our ecosystems and our environmental life was a discussion board on plastic water bottles. These water bottles are ending up in landfills, and the plastic chemicals are being sent off into waterways, or even the bottle itself are ending up on oceans and rivers, and these bottles are harming our fish and our aquatic life, and we don't really understand or think about daily how these bottles are impacting our daily lives. Aquatic science overall, this year I had a lot of fun. I would encourage a lot of people to take it. It taught me how to manage my time, which I can still improve on. It taught me responsibility and to really think about how I'm impacting my environment and how I could really help someone and help our future generations. Overall, I had a fantastic year. I would encourage a lot of people to take it. You learn a lot of cool things about aquatic life you never thought you would. At least I never thought I would. And it really challenged me to think about how I can change and impact the future lives of people.